my son went through the fall.
Okay.
Did both.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, great. Are we ready? Is this on? Okay. I've really been looking forward to this. Believe it or not, I know Tim before I knew Tim. From the original Casey at the Bat that was on MLB.
Okay.
That has millions of hits.
Okay. Is that me?
Okay.
Okay.
That was Casey at the Bat.
Yeah.
You being Casey.
Me being Casey.
And then I started doing history in town of Brooklyn, and I ran into you at the library, and we talked there. And then I ran into you at the ball game.
Yeah.
And then he writes this poem about running into Tim at the ball game.
It's only a little bit of it.
It's only a little, but I knew. Nobody else knew. So,
And I haven't heard that one. So.
wow, maybe he'll be.
I'll run it with me tonight, so.
Okay.
All right.
It's a May poem and we're in June, so.
Seasonal, huh? All right, well, this is what Tim sent me. Tim Wiles has been writing and occasionally publishing poems for the past 44 years. He's the co-editor of Line Drive's 100 Contemporary Baseball Poems. A poem of his most recently appeared in the Stanford Community Challenge, an anthology published in May in the spirit of the late William Stafford. Some of his favorite poets are Dickinson, Cummings, W.C. Williams, Thomas Lux, which I hadn't heard about until I had to go look it up.
Okay.
Ellen Bass, Stephen Dunn. He retired in 2024 as director of the Gilroy Public Library. He's the former director and research at the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Wow.
So, Tim will be reading, hopefully, some baseball poems. You can't, does anybody have any problem with that? I love this. I'll let you tell the Secret Service story
Do you
yourself.
want me to start with that or start with poems?
Well, you can do whatever you want.
Okay.
You got it.
I don't get to it, remind me. So, anyway.
So, everybody, welcome.
Thank you, thank you. What Mark was referring to about Casey at the Bat is that when the U.S. Postal Service issued a Casey stamp in 1996, my second year of employment at the Hall of Fame, there was a gentleman in town who was about 6'6", and his name was Stretch Redding, probably still lives there, and he was the guy who worked the counter at the post office. And whenever they would put out a celebrity stamp, he would dress up as that person, such as Elvis or a 6'6" Marilyn Monroe. But when they issued a Casey stamp, he was on vacation. So the postmaster, I don't know if you say postmistress or if you call her a postmaster, but anyway, the postmaster called over to the Hall of Fame and they said, do you have anyone who can dress up as Casey at the Bat for the issuing ceremony for this stamp? So I did that and posed for pictures all day, and people kept saying, when are you going to recite it? And I said, well, I don't know how to do that, but I learned how to do that within the next year or two. And then I recited Casey at the Bat approximately 2,500 times in 22 states. And I love the poem, but I got really tired of it. So I retired from Casey at the Bat. And when I did have Casey at the Bat, I could do Baseball's Sad Lexicon and a couple of other poems and a couple of songs and so forth. The highlight of my singing career was being told that I had the very rare ability to sing in several keys at once. So I do have, and I'm not really familiar with the format, but I'm working with the idea that I have about 20 minutes up here.
That's correct.
So I brought 7 baseball poems and 7 non-baseball poems. And I thought I'd start with a non-baseball. I wasn't smart enough at home today when I was preparing to think about the fact that I was going to be at an Arboretum. But I looked through my stuff while we were getting ready to start, and I found that I have 3 poems that have to do with trees here. I'm going to assume, since you all like poetry, that and since you're all adults, that a little bit of lusty appreciation for the whoever you want to appreciate is not out of bounds in this setting. Okay, so this is called Watching the Trees. I wrote this last year in May. Okay, so watching the trees. The trees are making love. The breezes are heavy and rhythmic, insistent. I've never lived in the woods, but I am watching great sheets of greenish yellow pollen flying through the air. The trees toss and sway, involuntarily moving, spilling their seed to bouncing receptors, who enact their role and take in what the world gives them. The trees do not know that they are naked here in the garden. The Chinese have a euphemism for making love, making the wind and the rain.
Wow, is that true?
Yes, that's true. Applause is lovely, but you don't need to do it after every poem.
Okay.
So this is a poem that did get published earlier this year. Dan Wilcox is wearing his t-shirt from the National Baseball Poetry Festival in Worcester, Mass., which he's gone to. They had the third annual this year. He went to the first and second, and I went to the third, and enjoyed it a great deal. I never, in fact, I only went to the first day, because if you got either a publication credit from them or an honorable mention, this got an honorable mention, they let you in for one day for free, so that was nice. And hotel rooms, for some reason, in April in Worcester, Massachusetts, are $350. So I went for the afternoon, and then I drove home. It's only about 100 miles. So anyway, but this is a poem I wrote long ago. My work at the Baseball Hall of Fame involved a lot of editing, so that you'll see that in the poem. It's called Doubleday Field, Late Afternoon. After the game, there are two. The groundskeeper, slowly raking as shadows advance from the outfield, and me, alone in the grandstand, proofreading a manuscript, each of us concerned with minor imperfections on our fields. All right, now, this is a very short poem about trees that I wrote back in college. They were teaching us, this was a class about the American short story, and we were reading one of those Southern Gothic women writers. I can't remember which one it was, but there was a story, maybe some of you have read it, where she had someone, the protagonist had someone doing work on her grounds outside of her house, and a tree falls, and I can't remember if this tree hurts anybody when it falls or not, but there's a suggestion that there might be some violence in this story. And it's a chinaberry tree that falls, and I had never heard that word before, chinaberry, excuse me. And the teacher said, but she is not a chinaberry tree. And I wrote that line down, and then I wrote this. She is not a chinaberry tree. She is no climbing vine, no trellis of arboreal purpling fruit. She is darker, deeper. She flows. She grows in time, not place. She has a chinaberry face. All right, now we're going to have some fun with baseball. So I had long noticed that certain baseball players' names form sentences, such as Pete Rose. That's a sentence, right? Or Rick Waits. Okay. So Rick Waits once came into the library where I was working at the Hall of Fame, and I said, "Oh, I've always wanted to meet you. You know, your name is a sentence." And he was a little dumbfounded, and I explained it to him, and he said, "I'm over 50 years old, and no one's ever pointed that out to me." And I said, "Well, it's your lucky day." So anyway, I started making lists of baseball players whose names are sentences. And there are quite a few of them. So while this is a 5-page poem, don't worry, there's a lot of white space on the pages. So, and almost every verse starts with a player's name. Davy Lopes around the bases. Kelly Downs, opposing hitters. Raleigh fingers the ball while peering in for the sign. Woody held at first base. Lee May be the pinch hitter. Razor shines his shoes before every game. Rick waits for the batter to step into the box. Ernie Banks downtown. James shields his face with his glove. Will Smith get a hit? Billy burns with competitive desire. Maury wills his profession to his son Bump. Cliff Fields anything hit his way. Walt masters the strike zone. Alec Mills around the clubhouse. Pat borders his teammates on the bench. Ricky bones his bat to give it a smooth sheen. Greg nettles hitters with his fielding. Derek Parks one into the bleachers. Barry bonds with no one. Harry spies on the other team's signs. Charlie sands his spikes to a sharp point. Charlie spikes you when he slides. Larry strands the runner on second. George shears off your whiskers with a high, hard one. Burley grinds up the ball with spit and dirt. Damian rolls after diving for the ball. Lance Johnson, that blister is killing him. Steve Sparks, a comeback victory. Hector Sanchez, and you'll get in his head. Tim Wiles away his time watching the game. Pete Rose and fell. I had to do some crowdsourcing yesterday because I had misplaced my list of all these names. So I had to ask my baseball friends on the internet, including Mark, who I believe deserves credit for Will Smith, or partial credit for Will Smith. So there's that. Okay, we'll switch back to non-baseball. This is a recent poem called, and you could make a stretch and say this is tree related. It's called Toilet Paper Considerations. My mother was deeply committed to the role of toilet paper hanging down rather than over the top. This was an important matter, a subject not of discussion but of frequent pronouncement, not to be addressed casually, a concept to be reinforced, a matter of right or wrong. She also treasured loyalty, especially among a family. So I hung my own toilet paper the same way and took note whenever it was mentioned by Dear Abby or Heloise or Miss Manners. I noted deviations at friends' houses or in public facilities, silently reproaching those who transgressed. I may have even engaged in guerrilla corrections and reversals on occasion. That sounds like something I might have done. This went on for 50 years or so. Mom had gone on to the great powder room in the sky, yet still I paid tribute to her convictions. In my way, I wondered, though, about physics and dynamics, ease of use and conservation measures. Eventually, I allowed myself to see both sides of this dialectic. I began to experiment and to disobey to see what would happen. Now I have moved to thinking it works better to flow over the top. I generally installed a new role in this way. I do not feel disloyal, just kind of grown up. Seeing things my own way, making my own choices, exercising free will. But what does it say about her and me that I never replace a role without thinking of her? All right. Oh. This is a baseball poem. I'm going to kind of switch back and forth. So, it's called Death, Then Heaven. Being pulled through the long tunnel toward the light, not knowing what comes next, suddenly emerging into a ballpark, impossibly green and bright. One of the old day games, batting practice flies soaring. But wait, the stands are filled with bookshelves, angels browsing among the rows, vendors tossing succulent fruits, foul balls bouncing harmlessly among the stacks, and it's Ladies' Day. Now, if you're familiar with the piece of music mentioned in this next poem, don't give it away, but the name of the piece of music is 4 minutes and 33 seconds by John Cage. It happened in Iowa City at the Center for New Music. I'd waited all my short life to hear John Cage's 4 minutes and 33 seconds performed live. When it happened in Iowa City, the silent, shifting auditorium moaned 3 times with a train rushing along on the edge of town. For anyone who isn't familiar, it's a composition that's 4 minutes and 33 seconds of silence. And if you ever get a chance to see it, it will guaranteed be different every time that you see it. As I suppose all pieces of music are, but much more different because quite a few people in the audience are not in on the and so they catcall and they cough and they shift in their seats, Anyway.
But plus, there's an instrument involved.
Yes, a piano.
There's a piano. Well, they once did a whole afternoon of them at the Art Center in Troy.
Wow.
And then you could bring your own instrument and stuff, because he has specific instructions about what you do with the instrument.
Right. Okay.
Other than playing it.
I haven't read the score, but I know that the pianist, when I was watching it, kept opening up the piano and poising his fingers and then shifting a little bit and so forth. So I assumed, Dan, that was all clever on the performer's part, but apparently it's written a bit. So I think there's a whole book about that composition. And it's not a book that's just, a blank page. Although that'd be
Great
fun.
marketing.
Yeah. So this is, I like to do overheard poetry. So this is overheard at Doubleday Field in Cooperstown. I remember in the 7th grade, there was this quiz, and one of the questions was, where was baseball invented? And I said, Cooperstown. And it was like, wrong. So that's wrong, sorry. I didn't perform it all that well. This is a really old poem, probably from the 1980s, when I was getting started. So it's called Dunes, D-U-N-E-S. Lying next to you, breathing in a tidal sink, I sail your satin surface, a shape so perfect. Who was the silent sculptor of this study in shifting sand? Who formed these dunes with what loving hand? And what wind or wave whipped their surface smoothly till it had the feel of softly shaped stones at the side of the sea? Okay, now back to baseball. One of my favorite players ever is Bill Buckner. And I became a fan of Bill Buckner when he was a Chicago Cubs player. I grew up in Illinois. And so my perspective on Bill Buckner is before the error that led to the Red Sox not winning the World Series in 1986. But the poem is written after that, because you'll see why. And I just want to point out for the baseball fans in the audience that had Buckner not had ankle injuries early in his baseball major league career, this is a guy who had 500 more hits than Ted Williams, although Ted Williams spent 4.5 years fighting in the Korean and World War II, and would have had 3,000 hits and likely would have been in the Hall of Fame. He had 2,700 and change, and he spent a lot of time injured, so he was a very good hitter. So it's called Dear Mr. Buckner. I grew up watching you at Wrigley Field, poking clutch base hits into the twilight before there were lights. Line drives pulled or rifled to the opposite field. Your bushy mustache was foreign to me because I was 12. You and Phil Garner looked like ball players of long ago. Later I read somewhere that you liked to wear bracelets, collected them. No wonder to me, your wrists were always flashing. When the others who liked you but never loved you at Fenway muttered, wondering if they could ever forgive you, I knew there was nothing to forgive you for. All right, now, I don't think you read this part, but I sent this part in the bio. I once had a couple of people walk out of a poetry reading that I was doing in college, and they were offended by the content of a poem that I have with me tonight, and I wonder if you'd like me to read it.
Yes.
Okay, so it's called The Breakup.
Twice.
You might need to hear it twice because it's so short. It's called The Breakup. I am stuck in a relationship with my penis that is going nowhere. We both find it stifling and would like to see other people.
So what happened?
Different times.
It was a coffee shop, and it wasn't a whole lot bigger than this, and I did not realize that there was a woman there with a young child, probably 4 or 5 years old, and she gave me a very, very dirty look on the way out. So, and I think it was an open mic, so it might have been the only one I had with me. So, anyway, all right, let's see, we're getting close. So this is another. This is a 2-pager, but it's, I just love wordplay, and of course I love baseball. So this is called 12 Short Poems on Baseball. Small ball. Round and white, smooth, magic inside. Hold it like an egg. It is sewn, its own. One red thread, it seems. Start out from home, dirt underfoot. The base, a place in space. Home run, score one, it's done. Stick the sphere in his ear, you hear? Wing, fling thing, bring zing, swing, sting, spring, king, ring, sing. You're out, no doubt, don't pout or shout. Penance, how I felt. Caught looking, a love poem. All right, let's see what we will end with here. We have 2 left. I'm going to do a tree poem. This is not a great poem in my, well, I don't know that any of them are great poems. This is not one of my favorite poems, but something had me bring it with me today, and maybe it was unconscious about trees. So it starts with a quote from Robert Frost, and it's called After Robert Frost. Tree at my window, window tree, you woke me so gloriously. Green lives in sunlight, radiant and stunning, brighter than green has ever been. I woke without glasses, prescription 20-850, an impressionist painting only for me. No way to capture, save in lines, the sense of blazing aliveness you gave to me. Tree at my window, window tree, thank you for giving this poem to me. And the last one is also not a favorite poem, but I wanted what I thought were the better poems to be first because I wasn't quite sure of the format and so forth. So these were kind of my bench warmer.
Journalism student or something, putting all
Yeah,
information.
loaded up top. I was a journalism student, so anyway. So this is called Pony League. For anyone who doesn't know, there's a level of youth baseball above Little League and conversant with the first couple of years of high school called Pony League. And it's played in the summer instead of during the school season. And the founders named it Pony League after Protect Our Nation's Youth, which may or may not bear some relationship to, it wasn't in my mind when I wrote this poem. I was a right fielder, so this is from my perspective out in right field. How could I have known when Rich swung late and lined foul far down the right field line, that the jump I got on the ball was so good that I'd impossibly have a chance to catch up to it. All I knew was running over grass, across the line, geometry and word problems somewhere inside me. A dying white liner, suspended out beyond where anyone had caught a foul before, out near the cars and the swing sets. How could I have known, as I dove and met the object of my desire, that 5 years later, his heart, unable to keep up with him, Rich would drop dead, rounding second. I took a little poetic license there. Rich died on a pickup basketball field. He was a state champion cross-country runner. And, I'm not a cardiologist. But when he died, he was the first person in my high school class to die. And, everybody wondered if he should have logged all those miles and so forth, but you just don't know. So, Mark did ask me to tell the story of me being knocked out by the Secret Service. So, as you remember, I used to dress up as Casey at the bat, and I'm going to use a chair as a prop in this story. And can I borrow your cane, Dick, for just a second? Thank you. So, sorry about that. So I used to recite Casey at the bat in this costume with a fake mustache and the whole bit. And I got pretty good at it. And so the Hall of Fame invited me to perform at the induction ceremonies for many years, and probably starting in 98 or 99. And I left the Hall of Fame in 2014. So the last time I did that was 2013. But in 2003, the elder President Bush was in the front row of the audience for the induction. He was no longer president, but he was a big friend and fan of Gary Carter, who was being inducted that year. And so, you're standing on a stage in front of, my wife thinks I'm crazy, but this is literally true. When you watch like Mick Jagger perform in halftime at the Super Bowl, there's about 80,000 people there. Now for the Super Bowl, it's also being watched by millions of people, billions of people perhaps around the world. But the induction crowds are sometimes 75, 80,000 people. So when we're watching the Super Bowl, I will say, yeah, I've done audiences like that a couple of times. But the only people you ever really see are the ones that are analogous to the ones that are in front of me right now. So I did my poem, and I had this great, for the baseball fans, I did the poem, and as I exited backstage, the exit was at the center of the stage, and there was an L-shaped or elbowed ramp to lead up to the induction, and as I came back down, I would go to that elbow, and then they would give me a stack of Hall of Fame induction programs. And I had the privilege of standing there while all the Hall of Famers waited to be introduced one by one. So I would generally get to chat with them during that time. And so I did that, I gave out my programs, and then the tent behind the induction stage is air conditioned, and the induction is almost always on one of the very hottest days of the year. And so I sat down, because my work was done. I sat down with a bottle of water, and this is my bath, and I've got my water here, and I'm drinking. And when there's literally no one else backstage at this point, the ceremony has started, and I'm done. So they have a TV monitor. I can watch and listen to what's going on with the induction. But they also teach you when you work at the Hall of Fame, like they have events at the Otesaga Hotel, and they have private parties for, like this year, Dick Allen from the Phillies is one of the people being inducted. And so the Phillies will put up a big tent somewhere on the golf course and have a party for all of their VIP people. The thing is, you don't show up if you're not either need to be there by your work, or you're officially invited. Like if you show up somewhere where you're not supposed to be, they really want tight security, and they also want their guests to feel, not like fans can just jump at them from any direction to ask for autographs and photographs and so forth. So you don't talk to anybody who doesn't talk to you if you want to keep your job there. And so anyway, I'm sitting there drinking my water, and it's a very, very hot day, and the president is wearing a blue sport coat over his dress, ensemble. And he comes ambling backstage with 4 Secret Service agents right behind him. And they sit down right about where our last row is here, right across from me. And I know my training, I'm not gonna get up and go talk to them or anything. But he sees me, and he jumps out of his chair and strides across. He came back because it was so hot, in case I didn't say that. But he strides across the room, reaching out his hand and saying, "Is that Casey? You did such a wonderful job." So I drop the water, and I stand up to shake the president's hand, and I do what you do with a baseball bat if you're holding one. And the next thing I knew, I woke up. And I had a knee here and a knee here, and all of my extremities being held down. And they helped me up, and they apologized, and they said, we don't like people to get too close to the president with a bat. And I said, we are in Cooperstown. You might want to tell him that. And then I spoke with President Bush 1 for 5 minutes,